going on, guys? Way from Revolution here with the one and only Felix Baumgartner, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you, sir?
I'm very fine, thank you, Wei, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's day 2 of Geneva Watch Days. We're about to do a symposium on independent watchmaking and the guys that would be in the halls of Valhalla for independent watchmaking, and certainly Felix Baumgartner will be one of those. How are you, Felix, and how are you feeling about this momentous anniversary of yours, 25 years or a quarter of a century? How does that make you feel?
25 years of craziness, of opening up the playground of Haute Horlogerie. It was actually, you know, a lot of pleasure, but also a lot of pain. When we started in the very beginning, actually, it was not very well respected and seen what we are doing, pushing boundaries, coming up with new emotions, new ideas. And now I'm very glad after 25 years, actually, somehow, not all the industry for sure, but a part of the industry has adopted somehow this way of thinking and this way of being, and I think this makes watchmaking alive today.
For me, it was so important that URWERK existed because it was like the first truly fresh and original horological language that I saw, you know? Mm-hmm. And it was not just the recreation of an old complication or transposing a pocket watch into a wristwatch. It was something altogether new and for our generation. Tell me a little bit about, you know, the struggle you had in terms of getting people to understand it, getting some of the older generation perhaps, or the more conservative people to accept what it is that you were doing. And also because you were doing it in a really beautiful and horological way related to quality.
Yeah, so it actually really took time. It was very impulsive in the beginning. I had that impulse, that will to express myself in watchmaking, and that came also from my love to art and culture, architecture. But with the time you can see, you know, that there is a real line, what we constructed, a real red line we constructed in URWERK, and it's really a new universe. And I think there is no other company who has created that kind of new reality, which brings a lot of colors and possibilities to our young watchmakers also. It's really a question of, you know, it took a lot of time. You do one nice watch, that's already the base. But then you have to continue, and with after 3, 5, 7 creations, where you can see that the puzzle makes sense.
Right.
And this is something you can achieve after 25 years. And we are in a good way, let's say. Yeah.
Felix, what I really like about what you do is there's like multiple sort of expressions of who you are as a watchmaker, right? So I think that, you know, I remember the first watch that I saw that really moved me was the 103.03, right? And that was when you open up the 103 case. And then when I saw Opus 5, and then after that, the UR201, where you made timekeeping three-dimensional, there's this artistic expression, right? But at the same time, there's this incredible dimension of pursuing chronometric excellence, right? So if you look at the EMC, where you basically took a witchy machine and put it inside of a watch, right? Yeah. And the AMC, which is insane because you created essentially a pendule sympathetique, but using an atomic clock. Like, which of these dimensions satisfies you the most, or do you need to have both?
For sure, I learned in clockmaking through my father, restoring very important clocks at home on the side of my bedroom, his atelier. I saw crazy machines of Ferdinand Berthoud. Yeah. Going through his atelier, so very straight to the precision inventions. But then you had on the other side like Campani clocks, which expressed an incredible way of art, painted art in a ebonist case, wooden case, with this time indication, which is somehow philosophical or which gives you a great emotion. So the field is wide, and actually both sides impressed me a lot when I was a child. And today with Martin Frei in the company, which comes from the artistic side, I come from the watchmaking, clockmaking side. But it's always a discussion between these two worlds, and we love both worlds.
I love that. Okay, so everyone talks about this famous conversation where you guys met at a party in Zurich in the 1990s, and you started to talk about time and space. Tell me, first of all, what were you drinking? And second of all, how did that conversation start between the two of you?
You know, we have in Switzerland this little champignon you can find in the Jura called psilos.
Yes.
And these kind of little substances can help to increase a little bit your imagination in that moments.
I totally agree.
Certainly also when you are young and in that movement. And for sure this is how the craziness somehow starts in these kind of exchanges with nice people, with people you love, and then with crazy parties. This is how it comes. This is our real life we had, and that transforms somehow at a certain moment to what we do today.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the psychedelic mushroom culture is actually now being legalized in many parts of the world and is being used as a real way to open people's minds. So it's very interesting to see that was part of what happened.
It can even treat, I think, what I heard, depression and stuff like that.
Yes, yes.
But for sure, it can push you, and probably you don't have to take it all the time, but it can give you a push from time to time,
Absolutely.
Why not? And to try out to explore new things on every level. It's cool,
I totally agree. So, people sometimes look at you today. You've got this extraordinary sort of, atelier in the old town. You've got probably for every one watch that you're making, I would say conservatively 100 people wanting to buy them, right? But it's also important for people to understand that in 25 years, it wasn't always easy. And you talked about the early days being ones which were characterized by joy, euphoria, and depression. And it could happen in the same day or it could happen from day to day. What for you was the lowest point?
For me, in the very beginning, for sure, we were hardly working on the first edition of 3 pieces, which were ordered by a crazy art dealer in New York, Boris Lietsov at the time. And then we finished these 3 pieces, and we were very happy. It was like the nuit blanche, like overnight, and to finish them in the right date, the right moment. And finally we shipped them, and then we shipped them. And when the transporter came, he was asking us to sign for an insurance for the shipment. The insurance costed 500 Swiss francs, and at the time 500 Swiss francs for the insurance was a lot of money.
Wow.
But finally we signed. We said, okay, now let's be sure, let's do it right.
Yes.
We shipped the 3 pieces to New York, and after 2 weeks the guy said there's only one watch arrived.
No.
And after 2 weeks then we called to the insurance, actually after 2 weeks and 2 days, and the insurance said, but you have to tell to me in the first 2 weeks. Because after that, the insurance is not carrying on you anymore the problem.
That's crazy.
So that was kind of a super tough reality moment where you really get really down, because you invest all your time and money in this start, which is essential.
Right.
And then you get cut like this.
Yes.
And this was not only once, that this is one story, but this is actually the story of the first 5, 7, 8 years.
Wow. And was there any time where you almost were at the point where you almost wanted to give up? And if so, what kept you going?
So there were somehow very difficult moments at URWERK in the beginning, but somehow I had always this vision of this force, this courage to say, but what we are doing is right, and I felt it somewhere, and so that's why I kept going on. So we had so much. We had the extremes, as you said before. We had extreme highs and extreme lows, and somehow that kept me going, and I'm happy for that.
1,000 miles per hour is a very interesting speed to me. This is the speed at the equator of the rotation of the planet, and I love that in your UR100, which in some ways your simplest watch, you've incorporated this also, because everything you do can't just look cool, but it has to be meaningful. Agreed?
Absolutely. You need both values. Somehow form follows function. We quite go after that for sure. Form follows emotion. We have a lot of emotion. We love that, but in the start there is the function and the meaning and the reason behind.
Right.
And then you create it. Then it goes on with the form and the emotion.
Yes.
So it starts with what you want to express in a mechanical watchmaking art.
And in some ways that is even connected to your dad as well, because I think he had a clock where instead of showing time, it showed the rotation of the Earth. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. This is the Gustav Sandoz clock. Actually, he nicely gave to me a few years ago.
Incredible.
And that's really a cool clock with showing you the space-time speed somehow on the equator. And that's an incredible way of expressing space and time. And this gave me then the idea to bring that to in our UR100.
Okay, outside of watchmaking, what inspires you? I know Star Wars and the Millennium Falcon, and I know Willem Dafoe. Why Willem Dafoe, and what else?
But Willem Dafoe is just a maverick guy, and that maverick guy is out of, he pushes the boundaries on his side, and so that inspires, when you see guys, Jack Nicholson is pushing another side, you have John Coltrane, which is pushing there. So you have in all these arts and people who express their art in a very pure, characterful way are inspiring to us in any art.
I think John Coltrane is an amazing analogy, because here you have a classically trained musician who is bending the way music is constructed to create an all-new art form, an all-new language, so to speak. And I think that's exactly what URWERK did. But it's important that it comes from culture first. It comes from education first.
Totally. You have, for example, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. At the time when he came with his first operettas, it was rebel. It was totally. It was breaking, it was a shock actually. And some of the critics, they said, but we love Johann Sebastian Bach. This is the godfather of classic music. But then today, we also see Mozart as classic and traditionalist,
Yes.
So it's going on. It never stops.
Well, what I think is the greatest demonstration that what you've created is a permanent part of the horological lexicon, is that even your earliest models, the 101, the 102, the 103, they're still great. And in fact, there's a lot of people who want to buy like the original models or the older models, the closed caseback models as well.
No, and this is really for us, for sure, a big satisfaction to see. We have very strong, like, little milestones somehow in our niche. We created some milestones which are taking value today, and this is the best thank you can have from out of the time.
I totally agree.
Through, so, and these are totally natural, organic values, and they come out of the 103 is probably the most traded vintage pre-owned watch today in our Horologerie, Nouvelle Horlogerie.
Why do you think the world has gone absolutely insane for independent watchmaking?
I can only answer that from a positive side, which is watchmaking started in a very independent, inventive way, and now is coming back a bit to these small structures where we are pushing boundaries.
Right.
And it's watchmaking never started with an industry. So that came later when watchmaking became also a business and industrial product.
Yes.
But now with independent watchmaking, it's coming back to this artisanal, pushing boundaries, creative, curious watchmaking.
Yes.
And I think at the end of the day, this is what people touch the most, this emotion, because just purely the time you have on your phone.
You're so right, and it's really interesting that you mentioned that. But yes, so the roots of watchmaking itself were independent watchmakers, and then, as you were saying, brands got built up, and we became so conditioned to think that that's watchmaking. But actually, the reality is, real watchmaking, the source of watchmaking, comes from individuals. Like for me, what I love about an independent watch is, first of all, I love to meet the individual who actually created it, rather than it being a group of people who had a committee meeting about what they should make at a certain price point, right? And second of all, it is like the exposure of a part of the soul of that person, and that is so emotionally affecting. It's kind of like, that's the same thing with painting, the same thing with sculpture, the same thing with music. It's the exposure of that person's soul, and I absolutely love that. How do you define independent watchmaking? Like, who is an independent watchmaker for you, and who isn't?
It's for sure quite a crucial question. Where do you put the limits? It's an independent watchmaker who is depending on. You are always depending on someone,
Right.
But on our side, on URWERK side, we have actually quite created our own universe with our own finances, and we proved that that works, that universe is balanced. And you have a lot of companies, they start with a business plan or
Right.
with an idea, and then the balance is not there, and then they get financial aid, help from investors, from banks. And from that moment on, for me, it's no more purely independent. So for me, it's really if the somehow the owner, but also the one who started, owns the company. This is for me the purest way of independent watchmaking.
Yes, but Felix, you are also blessed by the fact that you're also a good businessman, right? Because there are also a lot of brilliant creators that we know who've essentially gone bankrupt because they're terrible business people. Yeah.
If I would be a good businessman, URWERK would not still produce 150 or 200 watches per year. We would produce 20,000. Like Richard Mille. Okay, Richard Mille is producing 5,000-6,000 watches a year.
Right.
He's a good businessman.
He's a brilliant businessman.
He's a brilliant businessman. An absolute He's probably less brilliant watchmaker. He's not a watchmaker.
He's not a watchmaker.
He's a brilliant businessman.
Yes.
So I'm still more on the watchmaker side than on the business.
How about
side.
someone like François Paul for you, who makes almost 1,000 watches, but his watches are watchmaking, you know.
I have a lot of respect of François Paul Jouan, of the way he constructed his independency somehow, in creating his own manufacture of movement, of cases, his own boutiques.
Yeah.
So, but see, he's no more the only owner of that.
Right.
He shares that, but he does that in a very clever way. I have a lot of respect on that side.
Okay. So I think one or two last questions. Maybe you've answered it already, but who is the watchmaker that you admire the most, besides obviously your own enterprise?
I do not have one
Right.
watchmaker god anymore.
Right.
You know, and if I had one day, it was more like Ferdinand
Ferdinand
Berthoud.
Berthoud, right.
These kind of guys,
Right.
which inspired and gave me the initial power.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't tell you now a specific name.
Okay. If Felix Baumgartner was going to make an ultra classic watch, what would it look like?
You know, in my opinion, a classic watch becomes classic through time.
Yes.
And for me, actually, somehow, from our niche, independent watchmaker niche, the 103 is becoming slowly but surely a classic.
I totally agree. It's like the Barcelona chair when it first came out. It was disruptive and modern, and today it's one of the most classic pieces of furniture that a person can have in their home. You know?
Exactly, as I said before, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart today is a classic. At his time, he was a rebel.
Yes.
So that's coming with time. That you don't do that.
Right.
You know, it's something which comes out of your puzzle you are doing in your life.
Yes.
So for us, simple. It's too difficult to make a round watch with 3 hands. It's too difficult for us.
Your father is very well known as a restorer of antique clocks, and he has actually built up collections for some of the most famous people in the world as well. He is a master of all things antique, right? How does he view your achievement, and what watch does he wear?
So my father is a proud owner of a 102 we made for him at the time, and the 103 in white gold. So in the very beginning he was not so happy, because his idea is that I join him in his atelier.
Oh, really?
This was absolutely the goal.
Yes.
When I started the watchmaking school in Solothurn.
Right.
And he was upset, somehow disappointed when I didn't.
Right.
When I joined more like here in Geneva, Sven Andersen's atelier, and Vacheron Constantin in the service après-vente. So that was for him uncool. And it took him a few years to accept this.
Yes.
And finally he's super proud, and he's super happy, and still restoring clocks.
Amazing. Last question. How will you ensure the future of URWERK beyond yourself? Are you now training your children to one day be watchmakers?
No, but we have at URWERK, we have a family, and there is not only me and Martin. We have people and the karma in our company, which goes quite deep. And I think this energy, we maintain this energy because this is how we love to create and live and work.
Wonderful.
And this will go on. And one day it can pass to one of our childs or not, but we will find the right person who can take that karma over.
Happy 25th anniversary.
Thank you,
Felix,
Wei.
it's been a real pleasure, sir. And looking forward to doing the symposium with you.
Thank you very much, Reiko.
Cheers. Great brother.